Hello, everybody. I'd like to introduce you to Dani Mechlowitz from Delta Fulfilment, part of the ITD Global Group. And our subject matter today is the fulfillment sector. Thank you very much for joining us today, Dani.
Thank you, David. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Can you give us an overview of your business and its position in the supply chain cycle, please?
Sure, yeah. So the fulfillment arm of ITD Global Group is called Delta Fulfilment. Been operating for around 8 years now. And very much focused and has been more or less from inception on e-commerce fulfillment. So working with scaling brands, specifically who have their own website, and supporting them on their storage of goods, but obviously fulfillment and direct to consumer, pick and pack and direct to consumer, mainly in the UK, but also across the world.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And obviously you're part of the ITD Global Group. I know a bit about it, but some of our viewers and listeners won't. Can you tell us a bit about the group, please?
Yeah, so the group has been, or ITD Global has been around for about 21 years now, I think. They focus more on the carrier brokerage side of things. So they have a few different arms within the business. You've got the carrier relationships with all the mainstream carriers, which they've been working with both in domestic and export and also import. So that's packages, small packages all the way up to large packages, both domestically and anywhere in the world. They've got a freight department supporting air freight and sea freight, predominantly from the Far East. The company started with actually offices in China. So China to UK and UK to China has always been a very strong lane, both for samples and air freight and sea freight. And that continues to be the way. So ITD's been around obviously 21 years, and obviously Delta formed as part of the group about 8 years ago. And it's obviously with ITD's buying power, the carriers helped Delta also, come competitively to market, because carrier rates are definitely make up, 70-80% of a cost of an order. So that's definitely helped along the way to really help Delta grow. So that's sort of the synergy. There's a lot of synergy between them, and it does we are now covering within the group a 360 supply chain. So helping customers, pick up from their factory, wherever that was in the world, bring it into the warehouse, currently in the UK, which is our main warehouse, store the goods and pick and pack those goods as the orders come in from the customer and deliver direct to customer. So it's a really end-to-end solution which we are now offering, which is nice.
Okay, thanks for going through that with us, Dani. One of the questions I always ask everyone is, what brought you into the lovely world of logistics?
Logistics isn't for everyone, as I'm sure you're aware, but it's a great industry. There's never a dull day. I'd say the enjoyment of it is coming up with solutions and finding the best, consultancy approach to a problem, or which carrier is best, because there's multiple carriers out there, and each carrier serves a purpose in their respective markets. So I got involved. Sort of out of university, family-owned business at that time, ITD. A lot smaller than it is now, and dove into 21. Dove into that world of logistics, and 15 years later, still in it, still enjoying it, still get a kick out of it every day, and made some great relationships along the way, across the board.
Oh, fantastic! And most of us that are in it and love it, generally have sort of fallen into it or through family, but like you say, it's a wonderful industry. So, please tell us about the fulfillment, sector, and how you see the sector developing in the next few years.
So, you've got obviously a few different elements of the sector. E-commerce is definitely, obviously since COVID had a real bump. I think things have calmed down slightly since then. E-commerce is definitely the biggest area of growth with logistics, from what I'm aware of. You've got to obviously constantly innovate. So brands, whatever worked last year doesn't exactly work this year. So marketing, ways of marketing is constantly changing. How to get to customers, if it's via TikTok or Meta or whatever it may be, constantly evolving. And therefore, it also pushing us logistics from a support perspective is, what can we do to support that? Can we do later cutoffs? work 6 days a week, 7 days a week. So we've constantly got to be innovating and working with the brands to say, okay, what can we do better? Robotics is getting cheaper. I wouldn't say it's cheap enough yet, but it's getting more accessible to the mainstream market. And I think over the next 5-10 years, that will become more accessible, and there'll be a better ROI on investing into sort of robotics in the warehouse in some shape or form. I think especially as the labor minimum wage continues to rise, unfortunately, robotics will become more of a necessity to really streamline the operations. So I think, innovation in terms of where it's going is very much around AI, robotics, and that running the warehouse and making the core decisions as to where you put goods, how you replan, what needs to go where. And that's going to be quite interesting because AI is definitely growing at a rapid pace, and learning all that data as to where goods go and sit and fit and what boxes to use is going to be very, I think, a big piece of innovation over the next few years.
No, thank you. That's a very good overview, and there's lots of moving parts, in logistics anyway. But with the changes that are going on in the world, and we'll talk about the green transition later in our conversation. What do you see as the biggest threats for the sector in the next few years?
I mean, I guess coming back to what we just sort of discussed now, I think labor shortages is a challenge on sort of quality of labor. The cost of labor is obviously continuously to go up, and that's it's in the last 4 or 5 years alone, it's gone up 20-25%, which is, I don't think we've ever seen sort of increases like that in the last 10-15 years. Obviously Brexit as well, did cause challenges around sort of foreign labor and people sort of going back to Eastern Europe, or wherever they're sort of the common people in the warehousing world. So there's constant challenges there, and obviously then AI and robotics, it's I guess a challenge, but also an opportunity. So it's hard to put a name on it, but that's sort of what I'd say is the sort of main challenges there.
Yeah. Like you say, a lot of the opportunities can be threats, and if you, I suppose, time it wrong, or invest at the wrong time, it's a bit like electric vehicles, isn't it? Depreciation of electric vehicles does not make them very attractive generally at the moment. You're very much on the case there. And with the cost of labour increasing, I'm not trying to talk just for yourself at Delta, but just generally for the industry. Is it possible to pass hopefully all or some of those costs on, or is there a lot of resistance in the marketplace?
There's always going to be resistance. I think in the e-commerce world, everyone's working on tight margins, so very few have the ability to suck up massive increases. So yes, we have to pass some on, but what we try and do at Delta, and I'm sure other people do, is we're constantly trying to say, how can we become more efficient? So rather than saying, okay, we're going to pass the full cost on to our customers, is what can we do internally to become more efficient, do things better, do things quicker, and therefore not have to pass the full cost on to the customers, is sort of our view of how we are trying to deal with it.
Yeah, it is a challenge, and for everyone, because costs are creeping up, and everyone, you're in a business and you've got to make a return. Obviously, generally logistics is a high volume, low margin industry. It's generally a single digit, margin for most carriers, and if a couple of the dials go the wrong way, it can very easily be a negative margin. And that's the challenge. And certainly e-commerce is particularly competitive, but also lower margin, isn't it? High volume, low margin. So I appreciate that. And what are people not talking about in the sector that perhaps they should be?
Well, they're not talking about. I guess it's the what sort of government support is going to be there in terms of what's happening in the sector. The budgets continue to change. And environmental regulations, fuel costs continue to go up, And then you've got all the the global sort of tensions, tariffs in the US and tariffs and that will have a major play out in the sector. So there's lots of different things up in the air at the moment, which can and will affect fulfillment and just a wider sector. And there's a lot of unknowns, which is quite scary in some ways.
Yeah, probably challenging. And within the fulfillment sector, like in the, say, the pallet network, there's a group called the Association of Pallet Networks. It's like a forum for them all. Is there a forum for the fulfillment sector?
Funnily enough, not really. I mean, you've got sort of a warehousing association, but they are, I think, again, this is just my personal opinion. I think it's mainly being focused on the bigger sort of 3PL, pallet in, pallet out type stuff. And I've not come across a proper forum, focusing on e-commerce fulfillment, because e-commerce fulfillment is now very much, its own. There's so many of them out there, and it's very different to a pallet in, pallet out story. So I don't think you can consolidate those two into a single forum. Over the last few years, I've built some really good contacts and really good relationships in sort of e-commerce fulfillment, and we all go through the same challenges. And so thankfully I've sort of been able to build a good community around me who, I can turn to, even though we're competitors, but to sort of discuss sort of different stuff that we're going through. So it's not an official forum, but I think it's really important, whatever sector you're in, to sort of speak to competitors and, not just try and do the challenges yourself.
Yeah, and I think the forums generally do work, for the greater good, don't they? Like we did a podcast with Claire from the Warehouse Association, and it was very interesting. And one of the things she said was that the actual cost of warehousing is going up, but the actual rate for the job was going south. So that's a big conundrum in itself, isn't it? When you're actually paying more for the warehouse, and and market forces drive that, but actually the price people get paid for the job because of the competitive marketplace is going down. So, that's where, forums can work together to share values and highlight values, both to get to each other, but also to the industry and also to the government as well. Yeah, definitely. So, okay, good. And appreciate that. And how do you see the green transition impacting the fulfillment sector, and how that you think that will roll out over the next few years?
I think, listen, obviously, the intentions of going sort of more greener makes sense, and I think a lot of time when you're running a business, you don't necessarily think of that as your forefront. I mean, our warehouse is based in Wales, so Wales sometimes are actually ahead of the curve in terms of, recycling. I think, we have had to split out everything, which just adds cost on in terms of, we've got different bins, we've got 5 different bins for different sort of stuff. Which creates some challenge, but again, I guess it makes sense in the wider scheme of what's going on, and it's finding that balance between, make sure that we are sustainable and doing the right thing, whilst also trying to run a business and trying to, run a profitable business, take care of all the staff. So it's that balance there, which we are trying to. We're trying to do, and we'll continue sort of looking and following guidance from whatever comes through the government. I don't think there's anything there which at the moment is causing us any major challenge. Okay,
and as a consumer, I see the difference in packaging and all that sort of stuff. That seems to have improved a lot. Do you think that will continue? And is any support that the fulfillment sector could do with? Either from, manufacturers to help it, to make it easier for yourself, because obviously you've got to get your goods to the consumer whilst as green as possible. You've just got to make sure that they're in good condition, because you have returns, which isn't, by its nature, is not good for the business, and it's not good for your customers, or it's not very green. So it's a challenge, isn't it? It's a real challenge. So so is packaging, are things moving on, quickly and efficiently? To make things greener on the packaging side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a constant focus, with our packaging suppliers. We've moved largely to brown brown tape rather than plastic tape. The boxes we use and sort of the shred we use, we try and actually shred down our cardboard. So any leftover cardboard, we try and make that into void fill. which helps on various fronts. So yeah, we're constantly trying to sort of see, how do we get rid of, I guess, as much waste as possible in terms of even labels. But there is, unfortunately, in the nature of e-commerce fulfillment, there's all bits and pieces which are currently there, which are trying to obviously constantly see, can we remove that from the operation?
Yeah, and space in a box can cause damage, can't it? Depending obviously the weight of the product. You're an expert. It's not myself, but things moving around can cause damage, or even visible damage. It may not be physical damage, but the box may get damaged, and people may return it without even opening it. So that must be a challenge, for everyone in your customers that are ultimately shipping the goods that through yourselves. It must be a challenge. So it's an onward process. And in the conversations that we've had with people, do you think if there was an option for your customers or your customer's customer to have almost two options for, say, a package being delivered normally and then a greener version with a slight premium on? Personally, I would say if it was, say, 10% more, I'd like to have that option. And I'd like to think I would pay it. Obviously, depends on the circumstances, to be honest. But it'd be a nice option. Do you think that would be, if we could find a way of doing that, would that be something that could be done and shared between yourself and your clients?
Yeah, I mean, we obviously work with all mainstream carriers. The mainstream carriers within their overall sort of strategy is obviously continuing to become more greener and capturing the carbon emissions, etc. So we're relying upon them, and their plans. I think all the Royal Mails, Everys of this world are definitely quite on top of what's going on within their network, and it's definitely a focus. And then obviously we just pass that information on in terms of, okay, which carrier do you want to use? Which our brands have a choice of multiple carriers, and they can choose whatever their sort of where their focus is at in terms of do they want to go for the greenest carrier and then pay the premium, or what does that look like? So we give that choice to our brands in terms of choose who they want to. Well, again, where's that balance in terms of price, in terms of green. To make sure it's the right balance for the customer, for everyone involved.
No, thank you, Danny. And are you getting any migration towards out of home solutions? Because they seem to be quite a big thing in the marketplace at the moment, and also can be seen potentially as greener. And sometimes it can be more cost effective. The actual cost, it go to a locker or pick up drop off point. Are you seeing that when in your statistics?
Yeah, listen, Pudo is definitely, I think, going to grow significantly. I mean, I've even seen sort of my wife go and pick up quite a few things lately from some lockers, and it makes sense. Again, depending on your lifestyle and where you're working from and what you're doing, it makes sense. And as you say, it's definitely greener because the carriers go into one location and dropping off, putting in 10, 20, 30 parcels. I think as technology continues to increase, and I actually was quite impressed. I went to a locker a couple of weeks ago, and quite impressed with this as first time going. Quite impressed with sort of the way it all works and how smooth it was, and I can see it really, continuing to take off.
Yeah, and interestingly, you've done a couple of podcasts with locker providers. And I'd imagine from their point of view, it's all about utilisation of the lockers, isn't it? You pay for the infrastructure, and you've got to sweat your assets, as we say in logistics. Get your utilisation. So if they can do that, and fulfilment, and if they can use those as much as they can, it'd be great for everyone. During your career, Danny, what development in the sector has surprised you most in your career so far?
It's quite a wide question. Development in the sector. I mean, listen, the carriers, I mean, in the sort of 14, 15 years I've been, I think the carriers definitely improved. The tracking of the parcels, just the ease of use, the apps available, specifically in the e-commerce space, has definitely come a long way. The time slots, it used to be that 6, 7 years ago, just DPD who offered time slots, and they were the only ones doing it. All the carriers have sort of caught on, doing a pretty good job of it. They're delivering later, during 6 days a week. So the carrier e-commerce market in the last 10, 15 years have really sort of developed into something that's a lot more trustworthy to the consumer. And therefore people are, buying online with no, not thinking twice. So I'd say that's in the areas that I've worked in, that's definitely been the biggest development.
Yeah, no, that's interesting, because it certainly has developed, and it stops that resistance for from purchasing, isn't it? It really has been a game changer. Okay, wonderful. And the final question I'm asking everyone: if you could speak to the Prime Minister, then what would you ask them to do? I know it's him at the moment. What would you ask them to do, though, to help your business grow and flourish?
I think, my business at the moment, in terms of sort of fulfillment, obviously we're very labour focused. I think we've got about 80 to 100 people in the building, and it's really sort of supporting us. We understand wages have to go up. We understand the cost of living is there, and we're supportive of paying our staff as much as we can. So it's not, we agree on that. But I guess it's supporting us more in terms of not putting us off. We want to continue hiring, continue our recruitment drive, and we want the government to support us on that in terms of incentives around our recruitment, and not sort of come to a negative stance. So sort of I think that would be the focus of what I'd want to ask, and sort of look at how do we do that, how to make it workable for businesses, for our staff, for the government, and I think that would be what the actual question would be. I'm not sure, but that would probably be the focus of the conversation in the business that we're in.
No, wonderful. And no, I think it's not different than the anecdotal conversations I have in my day job in my recruitment business. So yeah. So you want to incentivize people to invest in people, because rather than potentially being penalised. I know that's not the aim, but that's how people are feeling at the moment. So yeah. Wonderful. I just want to say, Dani, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and going through the fulfillment sector, because it's really interesting to hear a lot about it, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners will really enjoy it. Thanks very much for your time, Dani.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.